Mercury is a trickster. In a week, 2 November 2020 through 8 November 2020, where Mercury will station direct during an election day, actually on the day of the election in the United States, don't believe everything that you see or hear. It's all about Mercury station this week, and we're here, right? Everybody's been talking about this for a long time, looking out at the day of the presidential election, the chart of the election. Mercury's going to station direct. And by the way, I've been on record. I've got a video. You'll see the link right here. I predicted the Democrats will win, and I've been reviewing that prediction. I've stood by it. I made it in January when Trump was actually ahead in the betting markets. I finalized that video just as Biden was gaining steam, and it looks like Biden's way out ahead in the betting markets. But this notion that Mercury is two-faced and Mercury is the trickster, what appears true isn't always true, I think can add some of that tricksterism into this electoral process. Now, the one thing that is really important in my view is that a direct station is really not the same level of difficulty as a retrograde station, at least according to the ancient text. So Vettius Valens, I think he uses the phrase, removes the hindrances when you have a direct station. Conceptually, that just makes sense to me. I mean, if a planet was stopped, then had to move backward through the zodiac, maybe review degrees that has just passed, finish work that was initiated, and then now it's stopped and getting ready to move ahead, it makes sense that that's a little bit more auspicious, right? That's a positive thing. You're moving ahead now. You're not going backwards. And so I think with the ancient texts also agreeing, I see this station as actually pretty good energy, all things considered. You know, I'm not freaked out about it like a lot of people. And I know there's been talks of the mail-in ballots and those issues surrounding that. I'm not saying those things aren't real or that they're not going to happen, but I just am less concerned of the long-term ramifications of it. And I think that we might be surprised that there could be a result on election day that is really abundantly clear, so much so that it's not as big of a crisis as a lot of people are predicting because of the auspicious nature of a direct station. Now, the other part of it is that let's look at Mercury's ruler. Mercury is in Libra, ruled by Venus by domicile, and Venus is in Libra with Mercury. It's moving and stationing direct, removing the hindrances. I just feel like there's a lot of power with these two planets and their activity to add to this cardinal cross. Remember, Mars is in that degree of its station, which will happen later in November, actually in the next week. And Saturn is direct in Capricorn. So I mean, these planets are squaring off, but they're dignified and they're coming into their power to finish off the rest of this year. But I really like Mercury and having Venus's support. The other thing about it, Saturn, like I said, is very close to Mercury. They just finished their second square last week, and then this week they'll make their third and final square this turn, 3 days after the direct station. But they're still very close within 1 degree. And so Saturn is the government, remember that. And Saturn making a square to Mercury, which can be things like letters, tabulations, calculations. You think about an election where you have computer programmers controlling the votes, these types of things, or in this case, mail-in balloting. You have that very mercurial, powerful Mercury, but there's this square to Saturn. So that's where I think we might see some difficulties with government mismanagement in terms of how the counts are going to go. But I mean, I think the ultimate outcome, because of the power of Mercury, is going to be clean, somewhat clean. Now, I like the Sabian symbols. It's a modern symbol astrology, and that's where you'll have channelers or creatives that assign maybe an image to each degree of the zodiac. Sabian symbols come to us in the early 20th century. Mark Edmund Jones writes a book about them, and I really like his work. They were channeled. I can't forget the channeler's name. That person, got the images. Mark Edmund Jones writes about them. I like to go to the Sabian symbols sometimes to get a little bit more information. 26 Libra, that's the degree of Mercury's station. The symbol is an eagle and then a large white dove turning into one another. An eagle and a dove turning into one another. What does that sound like? The eagle, we know that's America. A dove is peace, and then this kind of mercurial shifting of identity. You might think Venus is peaceful, right? Venus is reaching a peaceful agreement. Now, The Babylonians would consider Venus a planet of war, but setting that aside, in the modern context, we think about it as bringing people together or cohering. Mark Edmund Jones, when he writes about this, he talks about the idealization of events, and that if we over-idealize the outcomes we want, there can be disappointment. This is just a general principle for any election. It's very charged emotionally. People feel very strongly about it. And the outcomes are really undetermined, or they can be, especially in America, the craziness that is America. So I want to encourage people with this symbol to try to understand just how shifty the appearances can be, and that not to get too idealized about what you think is going to happen or what should happen or what shouldn't happen, and instead, come back into the body, come back into the groundedness of the moment. And whatever your beliefs are, I think being completely destabilized emotionally, mentally is probably not a good choice. So that's the risk here, is getting too charged and then maybe really suffering tremendously depending on these results. Some of it's understandable if you feel strongly about it, but I do think that you're better as a functioning, centered being to change the world how you want it to be, no matter what happens. I want to come now, so the 6th November transit, this is going to be Friday, 6th November, 3 days after the election. Mercury, actually now moving direct, completes that third pass square with Saturn and Capricorn. Mercury is in superior position. And so remember what I was saying earlier about the government being Saturn, and Mercury having this direct Mercury, the hindrance is removed, sort of overcoming earlier in zodiacal order Saturn. As Mercury clears Saturn, I'm thinking this is one candidate, if we don't have results, that this moment might bring us some results by Friday. So look for that, because Mercury will be clear there, and then Mercury will ingress into Scorpio next week, and as Mercury then leaves the cardinal cross, that is also a potential moment where I think clarity can come, especially I think it's the 13th, or it's in mid-November, when Mars will station direct, ruling Mercury, a newly direct Mercury. I think things maybe will hopefully be resolved by that time. The way we structure communication, being deliberate, editing, spending time and consideration, so we do things with a certain deliberateness, the kind of deliberateness that Saturn rewards. I would just encourage you, set aside the election, or actually maybe not set aside the election. I mean, make sure that what you're saying isn't knee-jerk. I mean, this is something we have to learn on Twitter, as you Astro Twitter people know. There's these hot debates. There's been a lot of them this last week, people wanting to talk about every astrology controversy, and it's sometimes, there's temptation to jump in. But I think it's best to really think and consider what you want to say, how you want to say it, because remember, on the other side of those screens, it's real people that are sensitive, people that are your colleagues and my colleagues. And so I just think that this kind of Saturnian deliberation can be a really good thing to employ with Mercury and Saturn making this third and final square, because Saturn is blocks, it's a wall, and talking to a wall, sometimes that's what it can feel like when you have a Mercury-Saturn square, that the communications have to go up against that blocked wall, or that your attempts to have boundaries might fail. And that you might sort of go over someone else's boundaries, given that Mercury is in that superior position. So just watch that, be deliberate, be careful. And so there are two more transits I want to talk about this week. This one is very close to my heart, very powerful. So I've termed this the Great Cardinal Turning, and how this came about, I always watch the transits. I always watch transits, and I always look for interesting things. Just so happened I saw that all of the rulers of the cardinal signs, when the moon enters Cancer this week on the 4th, every cardinal sign will have its ruler in its sign. And I thought, that seems rare. I wonder when that happened last. And I punched it up. This doesn't happen very often. It's actually only 33 times in 10,000 years. So this alignment, this is fundamental to the system. Cardinal signs, Cancer rules the Thema Mundi. The cardinal signs are the angular, signs in the Thema Mundi. To have these rulers here, I think this is actually a very profound event. And so profound that, it's really gone under the radar. And maybe other people have talked about it, I don't know, but my tweet is on Twitter. The thing about this Great Cardinal Turning, so the last time it happened was in 1783. The time before that was in 1578. And those are highly significant symbolic years, because in 1578, it was the first Thanksgiving. It was during Sir Francis Drake's circumambulation of the globe. So you had this rise of the British Empire using the powerful navy that it was able to develop, expanding into the so-called New World, and all of the horrible stuff that went with that, the exploitation of resources, the exploitation of bodies. That was part of this turn, but it's a marker, really. There's a kind of before and after that, right? After 1578, we have really colonialism going berserk. America, from that point on, the colonization grows until this moment in 1783, which is the Treaty of Paris, which is when America officially becomes a country after having won the Revolutionary War. So it's a big marker, a huge shift in governance. The other thing about that is that you have the Industrial Revolution. This is right in that early phase, and that of course brings all kinds of radical shifts and changes. More material is available, more medicine, but then you have exploitation in factories. I believe we're in a similar shift in 2020. It's a great turning, right? And these are markers. They're potent markers. It's not like they're separated from the flow of time, but you've been living in 2020. It's a huge shift. And I think it's a shift to more globally integrated technological governance. AI has a big part to play in how how people are governed, where computer algorithms make decisions of all kinds. I mean, we're entering into that phase. Time magazine has an article by Klaus Schwab, I think it was last week's issue, in the cover. It's the Great Reset, what the World Economic Forum has termed the Great Reset. And if you read about it, it's the fourth industrial revolution, where everything about life is going to be revolutionized based on technology, based on biotech. AI will change everything. And this is the year, the inflection year, where it's sort of before and after. Now we're in the Great Reset, and so this week, this transit, 4 November through 7 November, is this kind of climax of all of the cardinal energy we've had the last several years, because the rulers are here. First time in over 240 years. The first time we've had this, and we won't have it again until 22-25. This is huge, and this is this week. And I think how you want to play it, just mentally and emotionally, I just stand in awe of the reality of the architecture of reality, and how it's so telling when we see the sky clock and it times these changes. And so I'm going to bring a sense of awe and appreciation. There may be some innovative or some risk-taking electional astrologers may want to use this to make talisman. When else you'll never have this cardinal energy. I wouldn't do that. I'm not quite as much of a risk taker in terms of that type of work, but just being aware of it will open up something, I think. So when it's happening, when the moon ingresses into Cancer, be aware of it and just take some conscious moments to feel it and acknowledge it. Wow, the cardinal rulers are in their signs. And then the other way you can just think that cardinal signs, remember, are signs of new beginnings. So think about 2020. Maybe it's a little time to reflect. How has 2020 started something new for you? What's new for you in 2020? And be thankful for it. Be appreciative of it. I've got tons of change in my life, a lot of new stuff that I'm really happy about. So let's see. Then the final transit I want to throw out here, this Leo moon. So after the moon is in Cancer on the 7th, the moon ingresses into Leo. So the last 2 days of this week, we're gonna have this really nice Leo moon. Remember, I'm all about the fixed signs right now. The moon is trine Mars, so we have that overcoming support from Mars, which is nice. The trine is an easy aspect. And then the moon is going to be sextile Venus in Libra. I love that. And so I've got the chart here. So this is on 8 November, early in the morning in Central Europe. We'll have the moon applying to that trine of Venus and Libra. That's a really sweet energy. Saturn is averse to the moon. So use this waning moon in Leo, I think, to focus on yourself. There's a come down that I think is going to happen after this really wild week with the election. This Leo moon is a kind of it's a come down transit, because Leo is the self, it's the consciousness. The moon is the body. The consciousness is housed in the body, and this is the moon waning and dispersing itself. So I think we can sort of come down, keep the attention on yourself. You've got the sextile from Venus. Your friends are going to support you. You need a little bit of space. Maybe your friends, I think, because of Libra. And Venus being strong in Libra, your friends will maybe be able to support you, really focusing on yourself to sort of come down. Like, you're probably gonna maybe want to say, well, what does my system need? Your adrenals may have been really gyrating this week. So like I said, the come down transit. Okay, let's pull the cards. Let's see what the cards say. What are the cards telling us about this week's astrology? I'm excited about it. I'm really, really excited about it. Changes in my life coming up this week. So let's see here. We've got Mercury, we've got the election. We could do this reading, you know, I want to do, I've predicted the Democrats are going to win, so I'm on record doing that. But let me pull, I'm thinking I'm just going to do like the first draw will be Biden, the second draw will be Trump, and we can just see who's going to win. See if that will tell us anything about the election from the symbolism. But just, you know, one part of this pull will be A, B, Democrat, Republican. So let's go. Here's our Democrat card, and you know, our first symbol to pull from. What do we got? What do we got? Wow, Ace of Clubs. This is the fire energy. And it's new beginnings. So to me, I think by my prediction, just seeing this is that Ace of Clubs. It'll be a new beginning, a new sense of energy will be really thrust into this country. And I think about Sagittarius and eclipses, because that's where the South Node is. We'll have the solar eclipse in Sagittarius in December. I think that that's going to be a real, I could be, if I'm wrong, I'll just have egg on my face or whatever, but I just think we're going to have a sense of a real newness in the world with Saturn in Aquarius, that stellium in Aquarius, the Great Conjunction, and this is, you know, these eclipses here with this fire, this Ace of Clubs telling us this is a Biden win. This is a Biden win. But just to say the other element you can go with this, so setting aside the election, you know, everything I was talking about with that cardinal initiation, that's what I think these aces are too. Aces can be that pure form of the element that begins when you get an ingress into a cardinal sign. That's when that element ceases to be in a mutable phase. And it's not two at once. It's now one starting, the initiation of that one element. And so this is the initiation of fire. And so think about your life. Fire is passion, life force. It's just the reasons that we want to be alive. It's always good to think about like what's your goal? What are your goals? You know, as 2020 has revolutionized everything, what do you want to bring to the world? What are you giving to the world? Because I know you have gifts, and I know you want to be giving to the world somehow deep down. So what can you give? You're powerful. You know, everyone's got unique gifts. So this is something I would contemplate with this card. Let's get the Republicans card. Let's get this second card here. Let's see. I'm excited. I'm really, really excited. Let's see what's going on with this second card, with the Republicans' energy. Pulling a card here. We got the Ace of Clubs for Democrats and for the Republicans. All right, interesting. The Chariot. The Chariot. The Chariot is Cancer. It's Cancer. You know, in Trump's chart, that's his 12th house. He's a Leo rising. So, you know, you might think this is enemies for Trump. By the way, I'm pulling from my decks. I've divided them up. I've got special ways that I pull for these readings. With this second deck is a 26 card deck with the 22 Trumps and then the 4 Knights. So it's kind of, we're pulling a little bit from different decks, but that doesn't matter. We can still extract the symbols. I don't know. I just think Cancer, this is the cardinal energy. It's a water sign. And it's the Chariot is kind of the king, right? This is, look at that. You've got... You've got, you know, a king sitting in his powerful chariot. So I don't know. This is strange. This is strange for me. You know, I think whatever Trump does, he's probably going to have a career. He's this hugely influential figure with a lot of eyes on him. So maybe there's a sense of him riding. You know, that's the other thing. Chariots you used to travel. So maybe this is him leaving. He's going to leave the White House. Anyhow, I've already been on record. I think the Democrats win. So in terms of the personal stuff, you know, this is again a cardinal sign. And it just relates to this idea that this cardinal energy of 2020, like what are you passionate about? What are you doing? What are you starting? This is that same actual energy. It's like an Ace of Clubs in a way. But this is more, you know, the Chariot's rooted into the earth. You know, you're on the earth. You have the support of the earth and then that movement that can take place. Remember, the moon moves quite fast. And so this is a changeable sign of the zodiac. Maybe that's about saying that Trump's going to lose too, that there's this changeability with the moon. But I mean, you can think about rooting into the earth and then going with those changes, knowing that you're grounded and that you have that support is one way to do it. So have a great week ahead. As always, you can book readings with me, sjanderson144.com. Just click here to schedule a reading right at the top of my site. I look forward to reading for you, tarot readings, astrology readings, and have just a great week ahead. And if as much as you can, I'm concerned, I'd say this to all my friends, if you want to engage in the election, that's fine, but I would just watch your insides, watch your mind and your heart, and if it gets too intense, I would encourage you just to take breaks. Turn everything off for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, just go outside, take a walk. Breathe, do some controlled breathing. I think that will really serve you. And then check back in. Look, we're in a community, a global world. Everybody's, it's natural to be interested in what's happening in the news and the government. So I don't want to dismiss that, but just your heart and mind, I think, is the #1 priority. So have a wonderful week ahead.